Yes, we will do that. You had previously directed that comment to me, and I wanted to be as realistic as I could. We don't have 40 members here. We have members who are here.
You should be thankful we don't have 40 members.
Well, I agree with that also. We now move to the distinguished gentleman, Ms. Tokuda, for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I just want to follow up on Representative Porter's comments. But first say, Mr. Sanchez, I remember in just the days after the fire, Administrator Guzman coming to the War Memorial with us to see a congregate shelter, helping us to actually translate in Spanish because we didn't have a translator right there at the time, and allowing my team to then help this person, get their papers that had burned in the fire. And so just really appreciative that it was boots on the ground for anything that was required of us. So please relay my thanks to the administrator. But I did want to follow up, and you and I kind of started the conversation earlier today. As we know, small businesses, I almost call them micro businesses, mom and pop shops here, they're the core of Hawaii's economy, and definitely the case in Lahaina. And that's particularly true of this area. And so many of our small businesses, quite frankly, as we discussed, were still recovering from the pandemic. They were still trying to pay off their existing idle loans from the SBA. The fires hit, and all of a sudden, while you've got deferment, the thought of taking on another obligation is quite daunting for many, from a credit perspective, from a responsibility perspective. And as a result, they had significant challenges many times securing further assistance from the SBA, as Representative Porter alluded to. Mr. Sanchez, in the most recent numbers that we've been looking at, more than half of all home and business applications were denied or withdrawn. Withdrawn oftentimes meaning they couldn't get documentation or answers required to actually complete it. And in the case of idle loans, about 2/3 of all applications were denied or withdrawn. And it is a timing thing. But as we discussed earlier, how are we going to work to get those thousands of applications that came through? How do we get them to yes? Because many of these individuals need those resources to either rebuild, to be able to stay here in the place that they love. And so how are we getting to yes?
Yes, so we're very deeply committed to try to get people across the finish line and to yes. It's something that we learned in Florida, we learned it in Kentucky, we learned it in Selma, Alabama, and so we launched our reconsideration campaign. That means if you get a no from SBA, we're going to go back and figure out why the answer was no. One of the things that we've done through our reconsideration campaign, typically if our credit score is a certain number, minimum credit score, if you're within 5 points of that, there's a decent chance we can get you back to yes by working with you through SBA district offices and our resource partners. We expanded that here to 10, within 10 points. And so let me tell you what that actually means. It means because we go back and help get people to yes and to devote the time, energy, and the resources that is required for that. In Selma, a decline went from no to $400,000 in capital because we went back and tried to get folks to yes. I worked personally with one survivor here and who was having challenges with the paperwork and other issues, was frustrated. We got that disaster survivor from wanting to walk away to $574,000 in approved capital for them to start rebuilding their home and their business. And so that's the kind of approach that we're taking. And so we're bringing in our resource partners like Operation Hope, our small business development centers, and really that team effort and that going from just a Lend and Leave program that we used to be and that whole of SBA approach to bringing every resource we can to bear to help people through that application process. And not only that, try to get them other resources that they need.
Thank you. And as we discussed earlier, hopefully consideration can be made. Many of the things that disqualified people or forced them to withdraw, whether documentations, credit scores, financing, it was because of the fires. And so they need extra help to get them to that yes point, will they be eligible. So I'm sure we'll have more discussion on that. But Mr. Fenton, would love to chat with you. I've been, first of all, Chair, I will have you know, a few days when I first met him, I asked him, where'd you have breakfast this morning? And he said, Tasty Crust. I knew we were in good hands because he was eating with the locals from day one. So thank you, Mr. Fenton, for being here for nonstop for the past year. And you kind of talked a little bit about it in your verbal and your written testimony about the biggest challenge of the past year being housing, the thousands of displaced individuals and households living in already tight market. Majority were renters, many living on top of each other in many particular situations, and how it was a joint decision between FEMA, the governor, and the mayor to kind of target the short-term vacation rentals so that we can quickly put survivors into these homes. And in testimony, Mayor Bisson talks about how, the unintended consequences were the negative impacts on the housing market island-wide and for many residents that have been displaced. And there have been multiple accounts of predatory behavior as some landlords have scrambled to secure the higher, rents paid by FEMA's direct lease program and the state's equivalent program and displace current residents right now. And so, Mr. Fenton, given what you know now, would this still have been the best approach for transitioning survivors out of non-congregate shelters into this direct lease program?
Yeah, I think at the speed that we had to do it, this was the only resource that had those many units available. We have had since we've primarily focused on the vacation rental market, we try to limit the impact to individuals here that were significantly impacted by this event. Over 4,000 units lost in a significant event. So we tried to limit that. We have less than 10 that have been brought to us as potential issues where people have been displaced. We've turned those all over to the state's Attorney General to take action against that. But I don't know if there would have been any quicker solution just because of the limitation of infrastructure, water, and other issues to develop sites. It's taken us right now, I think the site that we're doing, somewhere around 9 months to do that. We assessed over 20 different properties and really had limited solutions to do that. Most of the people want to stay on the west side, and so there's just not a lot of good solutions. I think the vacation rental, using vacation rentals, was the best solution and the most timely solution. I think in retrospect, we should go back and look at that and figure out how to really utilize that in combination with local authorities and regulations, and how can we more manage that better in the future if we had to do something similar. We may also want to look at maybe a quicker housing solution. Right now our housing solution is really what we use in the mainland that we're exporting out here, which takes a long time. So can we use something that is more austere, that uses maybe solar or other things that don't require as much infrastructure as we do right now? So there's things that we could do to look at how we're setting up our infrastructure here and not have as a robust a system that we have on the mainland, and something that works better maybe with some of the conditions as we go into the Pacific, especially the far western Pacific.
Absolutely, thank you. And I know I have more questions, but thank you. I definitely think a hot wash after all of this is done to take a look at how we can come up with better alternatives and approaches, whether in Hawaii or anywhere in the continental United States, would be a good one. And also understanding the human capacity, in terms of regulation that exists here and ability to be able to manage what ultimately became predatory behavior, whether reported or not. What we do know is there has been displacement, and that's unacceptable across the board. And so thank you for that, and we look forward to more discussion throughout the hearing. But, Mr. Chair, we'll yield back and